Hi, everybody. This is my talk. Get off your SASS and use native CSS. I'm Mark Casias. Huh? Oh, thank you. I will make sure that I talk loud. I will. What's the word they use? Projection. Thank you very much. So Bob did come and check on me, by the way. So yeah, I'm Mark Casias. I work for Interpersonal Frequency. I've been there for about 5-6 months. Been in the community for a long time. I work on the community health team, community working group with the community health team. I also created the Smart Trim module, and I do stuff. I'm in a band called the Randomatics. If you're interested in going to New Mexico and seeing my band play. First thing I want to say is I'm not telling you what you need to do. If you want to use SASS, use SASS. If you want to use less, don't use less. I definitely am not a person that's, at one time after I'd given this talk before and somebody came, so which one should we do? Whatever you want. No, you have to make a decision. No, I don't. So, anyway, whatever you want to do, it's your opinion. Go for it. What I'm bringing up is why we're even doing this is the fact that Drupal has made it very, very easy just to use CSS. And the whole point of SASS is to do things that you couldn't do with CSS. Some features of SASS were really great 5-6 years ago. They were very, very key in your life. But at the end of the day, they're just creating CSS files. And you can do a lot of stuff with native CSS that you can't, or that you don't need this horrible build system where you got to learn Webpack, you got to learn JavaScript in order to write CSS. You got to know Node, and Node goes out of date every other Tuesday apparently. So half my job as a front end developer is refactoring old stuff to make it work again, and it's very frustrating. And with the now with single directory components, you can attach CSS directly to your component, and it'll automatically just be there. And so instead of having to write this whole script of all these different things, you can just write a couple things inside this small component. It'll get all compiled into a library that's only loaded when that component's loaded. Very fast, very quick, very easy. So this is an example of a folder of a component folder. Simple three files, 4 if you want to use JavaScript as well. You got the component.yaml file, and that defines the information. There's a lot of metadata in there that you can define. I personally don't put anything in there, but you need that file. So you can use it or you don't have to use it. CSS file, like I said, that gets compiled in or created into a library, and then your twig file, which actually has the layout going on. Another thing that you can do with Drupal is you can create your own libraries. You don't even have to use single directory components. You can just add things into a library file, and that will create a minified, small, compact single CSS file for you. Drupal does that out of the box. So if you have a bunch of variables, you can just throw the variables in there at the beginning, and then you can use them throughout your theme and whatnot. So yeah, using the library system of Drupal makes your life a lot easier. You can also attach JavaScript as well, but this is not a JavaScript talk. This is Alley Talks. It's a site that I help organize. It's a monthly accessibility talk where we do different things about accessibility. And its site was in Gatsby. I don't know if you're familiar with Gatsby. It was great for about a minute and a half. But it being a React build, it actually ended up becoming old and stale. So we moved it into Drupal, and we moved it into using components and whatnot. But it was way easier. Basically, I took all the React components, threw them into a component folder, added the component.yaml file, renamed the SASS files.css, the .sass files.css, because you can do that. And then there's just solid CSS. It's wonderful. One other thing that we can do is we can extend other libraries. Like we had this calendar module, the calendar view module, and it had some CSS that we didn't like. We wanted to change the color. But that was in the contributed folder or in the contributed module, the way that style was set. But you can extend, using library extends in your theme info file and overwrite their CSS for you. So I wanted to just bring that up. That's another thing, another way you can manipulate CSS in Drupal without having to worry about, oh, where am I going, where am I building this? It's just one CSS file. Actually, 1 second. Go away. In this file, the YAML file, go away. Where's the library? Come on. Sorry. There we go. In this, the file that was open, if I just looked to the right, I would have seen that the file was already open. But anyway, this calendar this calendar library is defined here, and it's just using the CSS file. That's something I didn't have in the in that slide, and I wanted to make sure that it was clear. I created the calendar field or the calendar library in my theme, and then in the info, that's where I extended this calendar view library. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. Hopefully I didn't muddy it up even more by going around for it, but I tend to ramble. I have a problem with build tools because they are excessive, and you got to learn a lot of different stuff just to create some CSS files. Node goes out of date a lot. Webpack changes to Vite or Vite, however the French pronounce that correctly. I don't speak French. I'm sorry, I should. But all these different things are new. Whether or not you want to use Yarn or NPM, all these different build tools are just unnecessary for CSS. And they get super complicated, and it frustrates a lot of front-end developers, I feel, because they're always trying to fight with JavaScript libraries and JavaScript packaging, where all they want to do is make something flashy on the screen. At least that's all I want to do. This is the slide I was supposed to talk on. And another thing about that is, if you're in an industry where you're bouncing from project to project, you're not just working on a single site. Things are built by other people in different ways. All of a sudden, you got to figure out where's their dist folder, or why did they put it into the build folder. We have a developer that constantly just edits the built CSS, and then is confused when it pushes up and then gets rebuilt. Why their stuff does not work anymore, and it's because the confusion of the different build, how the tools are built, because they can't build on their local because that's not set up, but it is set up on the distribution. So, and again, we're wanting to do CSS, not JavaScript. I talked about just renaming the SASS files to .css. You can do that because a .sass file, .sass file, is just CSS, and it gets compiled a different way. Now, if you have a .sass file, no, a .css or a SCSS file is CSS. If you have a .sass file, that's kind of different, and I just wanted to bring that up because those can't be converted because they're actually just indented how they're written. It's kind of annoying, the code completion. And I had AI build this for me, so I'm not actually sure what it says. So SASS has a bunch of indentations, a bunch of semicolons. It's kind of confusing. But I just wanted to make everybody aware that there are two different versions of SASS, so make sure that you're just writing CSS, I guess. Some of the SASS features that are out there that we no longer need. The first one is variables. Variables broke into CSS about 1.5 years ago, and it just makes everything easier. Now, actually in CSS, they're called properties, not variables, but they're variables. You call them with the var function in CSS, and it's the var and then the colons or the parentheses and then dash dash whatever the variable name is. It's the exact same thing, and you can use that throughout. You can define them directly in the CSS by putting them into the root of the CSS area. But you can actually do that per node as well. So like if you want a specific div class to have its own variable called green, you can actually set it for that class as well. And that will be picked up directly. But it's easier just to throw them all out into there. And if you have a good site, or if you have a site, you can actually see all your variables at the bottom of the inspection window. I have that somewhere, yeah. And the body, if you look at it, if you're inspecting the thing, you can see there on the bottom, it actually has all the variables that are out there. So you can figure out what's going on. We actually had a site that a background wasn't showing up, and we were confused, and there was confusion as to why. Well, it was calling a variable that didn't exist. So we just had to update what variable it was calling, and then life went through. Actually, all we had to do was clear the cache because it was using an old CSS file. So that was a real easy fix for me anyway. Where was I? Oh, and like I said, in the libraries, that you put that variable CSS in there, and then it's picked up by your theme completely again. Makes your life easier. You don't have to wonder which variables are where, because they're all right there in one single file. One problem with variables is they don't always work. You can't use them for media queries. You can't use them for other things, and that's where a CSS preprocessor could come into effect. So if you're trying to do a media query and you have a breakpoint, you use breakpoint variables a lot in SASS, and then that way it creates its own little media query for you. But the cool thing about it is there are two things about that. One, it's a very easy thing to type out. App media prefers whatever, and then also I found that. In VS Code anyway, and actually PHP Storm as well, it'll start auto-completing for you. And you'll notice that this autocomplete, like I have a background color of base and a foreground color of white, and I wanted to switch that around, and the AI or the autocomplete actually switched it around for me just because it figured out that I was trying to switch things out. So you can use some tools inside your browser, inside your developing tools. That will help you actually complete stuff like that where you don't need the variables and whatnot. But you notice that I can use variables in the background color, but I can't use them in the media query, and that's kind of a bummer. But they're working towards that, or they're working on making that happen so that we can use CSS or variables in media queries. But then you can also use things like PostCSS to, there are plugins in PostCSS that allow you to do that, where you're just writing CSS, but again, now you're back into the build tool hell because PostCSS isn't as cool as everybody thinks so. Another feature of SASS is operators, where it actually has functions and whatnot. And I just like this picture, so I wanted to put it up there. But you can do things that you can actually do functions in CSS with calc. You can actually do math directly into there, so you can actually figure out widths and angles and sin and tan. There are actually all sorts of calculus functions in CSS already that has been there for a very long time, which I don't understand calculus that well, so I don't deal with it. But there are some people that have done some spectacular animation with just strictly CSS because of the ability to use calc and all those different functions. There's also something that's coming out. It's actually not available yet. It's actually going to be an if statement in CSS so that you can actually write if the media is this one width, show this. If it's the other width, and now if, else. It's great. But also, it's the same thing. I do want to say that this is pretty much the same thing as defining a property. So in the bottom part, we got an aspect width of 44 pixel. But then we add a media query, and then that does the if for you, I guess you could say. Also, that's not available on any browser except, I think, the latest dev build of Chrome. But it's coming, and you have those options, and hopefully by the 7th or 8th time I give this talk, it'll be available. So,
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you just did.
Okay, go on for a second. Any pointer colon fine? What is that?
Any pointer, that's a media query. That's actually a new media query as well, where if it's something that wants to be specific, it's in there. So.
Specific to what?
If you have a pointer that is defined, like if you have someone that has a shaky hand and they have to have their pointer set up directly, then they actually, in this case, it'll make the button bigger for them as well. So it's like an accessibility thing. So yeah, and that's another new thing that I forgot that I copied and pasted that, but that's another thing that's coming, a feature that's coming. So. Oh yeah, if you look at this developer.chrome.blog, the if article, it actually has a bunch of links to all the other ones that are coming in you as well. So that URL at the top. You know what I didn't do? I didn't make a thing to my slides, so I'll have to upload them to the site. Sorry. I don't do the QR code thing like everybody else does. Sorry.
You're fine.
Another thing that SASS does that couldn't be done before is nesting, and that is you define things in one certain system, and then you can actually expand on them. A lot of people use that. This is a bad example of that slide. So if you want things in a certain class, and then things inside that certain class, you can nest in there. We could do that in SASS. You could do that in CSS. That is new to CSS as of about 2 years now, which makes your life just a tiny easier. That's one of the features of SASS that made me a fan of SASS, because I could nest things in there and I could keep everything real terse. There are people that argue with me a lot about it. There is a bit, if you go too crazy with your nesting, there is a performance hit. So beware of that. Using straight using that ampersand, dash, whatever to extend the class does a lot of damage to you. Not a whole lot. I mean, we're talking microseconds here, but it's still a performance hit, according to that guy. So we have a big thing on there. But what that means is, so this is a sample of my New Mexico hockey site, and this is the game twig that I put in there. And I've got a div, and then I output some attributes, and that's cool. And then I'm using a different component in there, and then I'm putting a game summary component into there. And what happens is it creates this great thing in there where it actually does this component ID, NM Hockey Game, so that I can actually define, now that's a data attribute of your div that you can use to define in SASS, or in CSS, in SASS and CSS. And what you do is in your CSS here, you actually say, selector, hey selector, anything that has data component ID with NM Hockey Game, add these attributes. And you can internalize attributes in there as well, so they're actually tightly coupled to your div. They're not going to show off or blow out anywhere else. They're only going to be in that single component, which makes troubleshooting that component very easy because you have all your data, all your styles, everything inside this one file that's really small and tightly coupled to your component itself. So that's one of the great things about nesting, and one of the great things about components is that you can nest very tightly coupled your components in there and make sure everything goes in there. Again, don't go crazy, but also your component shouldn't be a bunch of divs inside the divs inside the divs either. So you know that's your choice. Modules. Modules, is this the one that I did? Oh yeah, no, where you can import other things on there. You can import other CSS files into a CSS file. It's called @include. Now you have to do it at the beginning of your CSS file. You can't do it towards the end. I'm not sure why that is, but it breaks, or it just doesn't work. So if you're ever going to do an @include where you want to include variables in there again, into that CSS file again, it's not necessary, but you can. You can do an @include at the beginning of the file, and then your CSS file will know all those different variables and whatnot, or you can import different classes as well. Honestly, with the libraries, the Drupal libraries in specific, you can just attach things in order like I showed in this one. You know, you have in the library itself, you have the CSS defined, and it also does different layers, your base layer, your component layer, your layout, and your theme. So you can actually, in the Drupal libraries, include them in the order of importance. And then they will cascading style sheets, down as they need to. So you definitely can do that without having to worry about an import or include, is my point of that. Partials. So this next slide, partials are basically where you have helper classes in there, where you want to attach a class to another class. And that's just like Bootstrap, Tailwind, anything like that, where you just add a class. They're basically helping classes. I asked AI to give me a picture of Tailwind and Bootstrap frolicking in a meadow, and this is what they got. They're very cool. Yeah, and Adobe AI is kind of fun with that. And there's another one which was added because I didn't like it as much because I can't really tell who's Tailwind and who's Bootstrap in this situation. So, but anyway, they're available. You can actually create helper classes. You can create an entire style sheet of these helper classes, like padding, and make your markdown or your padding specific, or you can use variables and use that the same way as well. So, it's not a feature of SASS that I used a lot. Another one that I did use a lot was mixins, because a lot of times it was just a helper class. There's a difference between a mixin and a partial is you can pass variables into a mixin and actually do stuff with it. So like you can pass how many pixels you want it to calculate and whatnot. That's great and all, but half the time there's a default, and so it just calculates the default, and that's what everybody used anyway. So I never saw a good use case for them. That being said, coming up in a browser near you, there is going to be a new function feature in CSS where you can actually create a function just like a mixin, where you can pass in certain things, and if the value is passed, and you can set defaults. This one doesn't have a default value, but you can set defaults much like the mixins of your, and then be able to use them throughout the world. Again, this is cutting edge. It's not available on almost any browser. I think just the dev build of Firefox is all it's being used or available on right now, because they're still working out the spec on that. And actually, the URL there, the W3org class mixins, if you go to there, they talk about the specs ad nauseum. And they're trying to get them in, make sure that they're going to work across browsers. It's really great that the browsers, I don't know if anybody remembers the IE wars or the browser wars of the aught9s, they were fun. And I went to a South by Southwest, and they had the browser wars talk where they had the lead text of each, Opera, Chrome, Netscape, and Internet Explorer sitting on the table saying, here's what we want to do. And then every question was bashing Internet Explorer. It was really sad. And they were great friends. It was really neat because these people they're very well respected amongst each other. They just had jobs to do. And there was a feature that IE had that somebody was complaining about. And the person from Opera said, yes, that was a corporate decision, not his decision. Stood up for them. So I thought that was really nice. Extends and inheritance is another thing that you can do. You can extend other modules. That's much like using a partial or stuff like that. Again, frolic in the fields with your bootstraps and your tailwinds and whatnot. And then pre-processing is another thing that one of the big features of SASS that is possible, that makes it minified and everything like that. Combines all these different CSS files into one CSS file for you. Sure, Drupal does that for you already. If you set in your libraries, it's going to create and cache a CSS file for you as well. So you don't need a preprocessor. If you're going to use one, there is post-CSS, and AI did this post-CSS, the future of CSS. I don't know what happened there. Okay, Adobe AI is sometimes not good, is my point. But it basically transforms the styles where you feed, it'll actually write up the different variables for you and process it out. PostCSS is really great if you want to have stuff like that. Actually, in Drupal core, we use it. Everything, if you ever want to contribute to a theme in Drupal core, you have to write into a post-CSS file, build it, and then commit both the CSS and the post-CSS file. To which I say, why, if we're committing both, do we need to write twice? But we do. The build process, if you ever want to look at a really good, a really robust build process for post-CSS, if you look in Drupal core, in the core scripts, there's a CSS folder, and then the post-CSS build script there is really done well. If you want a good example, if you're like, how do I do this? There's a good reference of where to go. So, wow. That's it. I'm done. Those are all the features of post-CSS. Like I said, do with them what you will, but those are some of the options out there. I blew through this. Yes?
Why do you have a mid-cap slide up there?
Busted.
Because I did the stock at mid-camp and I forgot to do the entire theme, and Mid-camp was fun too. I mean, I think I did this talk in 15 minutes in mid-camp, so I've added a couple slides. So, yes. Yes?
Question. I don't have my glasses on, so I didn't see, like, I'm gonna come up here. You were saying that you had to write both or something?
If you're contributing to core to a theme, they want you to write in post CSS, build the post CSS, and then commit both your post CSS changes and your CSS changes.
This is just for Drupal core?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So I have a question, because I usually put like my compiler in the theme folder and then just have it all in there. But you did talk about kind of like recipes or like components and having them each in their own.
Yeah, so the components go, all you need to do is have a components folder, and then each component has its own folder. There's no build to Drupal components, or single directory components anyway. All the CSS, what happens is, say we got this event teaser and the event component.yaml file, and this is actually what it's supposed to look like with properties, because I was asked to do it here, where it has all the different information, what kind of properties it's expecting and whatnot. This is more for if you're using Storybook or something. That's the only reason I use it. But what it does is it takes the component and then actually builds a Drupal library with the CSS and any JavaScript out there. And Drupal does that out of the box. You don't have to add any different components, or you don't have to add your own build on this. I think I was trying in this one, yeah, there is a package.json, which I was trying to make a build for, post CSS. I was just playing around with post CSS, but I don't actually use it in this site, or you don't actually need it. But yes, normally your builds are inside your theme folder, and then that way you can work on that. At interpersonal frequency, we use Lando, and so we use a shortcut where anytime I run npm, it actually runs it on Lando inside the folder that I need it to be in. So it really makes sure that you're using the right version of Node in that case as well, because it's based on the Lando, your environment settings at that point. Yes?
Yes, you gave an example earlier about scoping your CSS to a data attribute.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I might have missed something there, but why would you do this over just using regular class? Like, what was the exact, what's the use case here?
Two reasons. Classes can be the same thing. You can have two things called the class, and now you're bound, or now it's not coupled anymore. With a data attribute, you're actually tightly coupling with that specific component itself. So could you just use, I think actually in this twig, yeah, in this twig here I have, I'm doing add attributes, and then I'm doing add class event teaser, which is, I could just use the event teaser class as well, but also because I'm using attributes, it's attaching that attribute, and then I can tightly couple. It's about being just really strict, making sure that your class is tightly coupled with that on there. So, is this actually up? Let's see. Remind me later. CD. Well, great. I'm sorry for everybody's internet crashing. I did not realize that I reloaded DDEV and had to start this one. So give this a second, and I can show you the live version. Actually, can I just go to Ali Talks to? Let's see. So this was our talk that happened Wednesday. Inspect. Oh yeah, I don't have the twig on the live site, so I can't really show this off. Hold on a second. Let's see. Oh come on. How about?
So, quick question while you're on the site. You said it was in Gatsby and then you moved it back into Drupal.
Yeah.
Was that a problem? Because in Gatsby it's supposed to be more about being static?
Yeah, and that was the problem. The fact that every time we had to update the site, Mark had to update the site, and it was time that Amy June updated the site every once in a while, or April, or somebody else. Yeah, I know it didn't happen,
Okay.
but so I wanted to have it. It needed to be a content management system at that point, and I needed other people to manage the content because it was updating every month.
So you needed to go from static to
Correct.
that.
Correct.
You didn't just boolean.
Yes. Yeah. And then, I mean, I just used, like, again, I used the React components and just threw them into a components folder, renamed the component, or created a component.yaml file, and then renamed the CSS files. And that was it. You done? No? Great. What other site could I possibly, oh, you know what? Yeah, this one's on. So this is my hockey team. But if you take a look at, actually, I'm just using straight. I'm not even using any components here, am I? Yeah. Oh, I am. I have a tournament teaser component. But so yeah, in this case, what I want to show here is out of the box, just with. Come on. You already get the data component ID up here created for you, so you don't have to write it another thing. Now, that being said, I did add a class to this one of tournament teaser as well, so to make it tightly coupled. And I wanted to do that because I wanted this to be kind of a grid with the picture, and I wanted to style the picture correctly because there were different size pictures and whatnot. So now that that's done, I don't have to show anything anymore. So thank you, computer. Any other questions? Awesome. And let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.